My name is Jeff Knapp, and I'm Executive Director of Oregon Optometric Physicians Association, and we're very pleased to have a star student amongst our ranks here at our Milwaukee offices, and Alex Plekhanov. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, certainly. It's quite an amazing story that you've got to tell, and if I could just set the table a little bit. You are 16, 17?
I'm 17.
Now you're 17 years
Yes.
old, and a recent story came out of the Oregonian that said that you had won a science fair prize, and it is going to be of great interest to our members, and that is an astigmatism mechanism that you found would be a little bit easier in terms of its ease of use than what's currently being used. But let's just get into a little bit of your background first, because it is pretty fascinating. So at a very early age, you really took to science, and it has intrigued you. And if I'm right, you've and I did take a peek at your LinkedIn page, and it looks like you've got a lot more than what was in that article. And building an airplane, also serving as a mechanic, and early on, tell us about what your early interests that sparked your interest in science as a career.
Yeah, so I think it really first started when I got in a young inventor's kit at around age 6 for my birthday present. I just really liked tinkering around with that. And so eventually that kind of led into participating in my elementary school science fair. That was in 3rd grade. They announced it and I decided, well, hey, why not try to do something? And I had some help from my parents for this first science fair project, which was on testing oil filters. So I wanted to see whether more expensive oil filters would be better than cheaper oil filters. Turned out they were the same. And I found that pretty interesting, and that led me to continue working on science fair projects in following years. The next year I accidentally put the home microwave out of order, but that didn't stop me.
How did the microwave survive that little experiment? Was it usable after?
It was not.
Well, lessons learned,
at
no doubt your parents' expense. But nonetheless, it is just an extraordinary background. Now, the science fair that you won propelled you to win a $5,000 award, am I right? And then you were also going to be using that towards a trip to Stockholm for the Nobel Prize Awards in this December?
Yes, this December.
So are you excited? You have to just be completely floored
for sure.
The whole honor and the opportunity to meet other young scientists when you're there. Talk about that event itself.
So I'm not too sure as to the specifics of the event yet. I do know that it's a youth science seminar involving many distinguished young researchers, and of course I also hope to meet some more distinguished senior researchers as well. I believe it includes attendance at the Nobel ceremonies, and then there's also a youth seminar where these researchers invited to this event, which I'm very honored to be a part of, and get to present to local high school students there as well, and hopefully inspire them to pursue a career in science.
And educationally, you're also attending courses at Portland Community College.
Yep.
And after that, it looks like Caltech is in your future.
Yeah.
And you've been accepted there. And when will you start attending courses there?
This fall.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That is just sensational. No doubt you have some scholarship offers just based on your background.
Yeah, a few.
Well, that's excellent. Hopefully more to come. So talk in specifics about the astigmatism mechanism that you developed.
Right, so no doubt you're familiar with the phoropter and the procedure that involves which is better, number 1 or number 2. This procedure, as you may know, is often complicated and annoying for the patient. Sometimes there are communication issues involved, and patients aren't really necessarily fond of it. So what is the problem here? Well, the problem, as I see it, is discreteness, so the fact that lenses are actually switched out. And so what if instead we had a 2-dimensional device and a patient could move around a computer mouse and find their point of best vision this way themselves? And the principle here is actually pretty simple. It's the same principle as in binoculars. where you can move a knob to adjust the focus. And in fact, when you do this, you can actually get a reading of your spherical refractive vision defect. And of course, this, for me, raised the question of why do we need optometrists at all if everything is so simple and we can just use binoculars? And as it turns out, as you know, things are more difficult with defects like astigmatism, which are characterized by not one parameter, as in the case of spherical defects, but by two parameters. So as opposed to just optical power, there's optical power and angle of orientation. And this greatly complicates things. But we do know that we can add spherical lenses together to obtain any spherical power. It works by adding scalars. And so why can't we add two cylindrical lenses together? And so thinking about it, I thought, okay, well, we have optical power and angle of orientation. To me, that really sounds like a vector. And so if we add two of these vectors, the optical power is fixed, we can't really vary it. But what we can do is we can vary their angle. And so in doing so, we can add two vectors and obtain any combined resulting vector within a certain range. And that really pushed me to try the idea of my apparatus, which uses this principle where two cylindrical lenses are rotated relative to each other. And essentially, what my apparatus enables is going from mouse XY coordinates, so a patient would be moving around a two-dimensional input device, such as a computer mouse, in an XY space, and this transforms into coordinates of the angle of each of the lenses comprising the apparatus. So there are two cylindrical lenses rotating relative to each other, and this transforms into coordinates of the optical power and angle of orientation of the entire resulting system.
That just rolled off of your tongue. As obviously you have spent a lot of time in your garage, I believe, is your laboratory, and you have plans, I understand, to patent your product.
I have a patent pending.
You have a patent pending, excellent. So we can add entrepreneur maybe to your list of accomplishments. What inspired you, I guess I'm backtracking now, but what inspired you in the first place to take on this project? I understand that astigmatism runs in the family. Is that what started your interest, that alone, or?
Yeah, so astigmatism does run in my family, and members of my family were a bit fed up with the process of which is better, number one or number two. Occasionally after coming back from the optometrists, my parents would complain that this process was so complicated and annoying, and I thought there's no way this can be improved somehow, because it seems like, well, we've made tons of advances in optics. Why are we still using a procedure that's a century old? And so digging into this, doing some research, I eventually came to this idea, and that's how things started.
So you're envisioning a kiosk model that can be used by optometrists in the future. Now, our listening audience will probably take a heavy breath when you talk about the irritation and the insufficient process that's currently underway. But what you're introducing is something that you feel is going to be a benefit to optometrists and, of course, the patients.
Yes, that's correct. So I hope that this device will be able to potentially replace the phoropter, and it will allow for a more intuitive way of actually diagnosing astigmatism. And eventually, maybe further in the future, this could maybe even be some sort of kiosk that could be present in optometric offices, and people could come up and get their prescription themselves and to just go through the process very simply without potentially even much guidance from an optometrist.
Well, it sounds like a great process. As we discussed earlier, it's a very heavily regulated business.
Of course.
And you will probably have to go through quite a bit. But at the end of the day, if what you envision comes to fruition, you're going to have an awful lot of friends in the optometric business.
I hope so.
And no doubt a ton of support. And I wish you really, really the very best. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about, your future plans?
Yeah, so I'm trying to get a startup going with this device, and so of course I'd really appreciate any help I could get, especially from the optometric industry, whether it's optometrists who want to try out my device or potentially just even review my work and give me feedback, let me know what they think of it, how it can be improved, or just any general thoughts. I would greatly appreciate that.
Well, no doubt, with all of your studies and everything else that's going on, what we will do is send a message to our members, and we can serve as an in-between, a liaison, if you will, with people who are interested in joining the project, either as a test market or somebody as potentially an investor down the road
Yeah.
with your product. But it is an extraordinary story, and I just want to thank you very, very much for sharing it with us, and we'll be tracking your success down the road. And in just a minute, we'll just take a look at your product prototype itself. So maybe you can describe it with a visual.
Yep. For sure.
Alex, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Great honor.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.